The first runner-up in this topic, the conserving the true lungs of the planet, key to preventing climate change, is Dubai National School Boys, Al-Barsha. Again, another award bagged by the Dubai National Schools. Yesterday, girls, today we have the boys.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Are my teammates ready?
Wonderful. You may start.
After the consultation, we're sorry to say that your patient is in critical health condition. His lungs have reached their limit and carbon dioxide levels are reaching the maximum. If his temperature increases by 1.5 Celsius, he might not make it out of here alive.
The patient's ocean level temperature is currently at 16.1 degrees Celsius. The poles are melting and his heart is slowly failing. The patient's rainfall will increase, droughts will appear, and areas will flood. If this goes on, many species will go extinct and we will lose the ecological balance.
You might be wondering, how can we help our patient? Well, the leading solution is curing his lungs. His lungs are the 70% of oceans that surround him, and the ocean absorbs 93% of the heat caused by pollution from the atmosphere and can help reduce our patient's temperature.
Moreover, the ocean surface produces oxygen through the plants, phytoplankton, kelp, and algal plankton that live in it. Phytoplanktons are so tiny that millions can fit in a drop of water. Scientists discovered that around 15 billion tons of carbon dioxide is absorbed by these plants every year, and they exhale 80% of Earth's oxygen as a byproduct of photosynthesis, which is more oxygen than all Earth's rainforests altogether.
However, these tiny creatures are in danger. Their diversity is being negatively affected by rising temperature, light intensity, the increase of ocean acidity, increased pollution, and the concentration of nutrients, particularly nitrogen and phosphorus.
However, when too many nutrients are available, these phytoplankton may grow out of control and form harmful algal blooms. So it is essential to maintain the ecological balance of marine life, mainly because these blooms have toxic effects on fish, mammals, birds, and even humans.
Subsequently, we need to protect these waters. The survival of marine organisms is dependent on ecological balance. Ecological balance is crucial because it leads to the continued existence of these marine creatures. It ensures that no particular species is overused. So, how can people help maintain and protect the plankton's ecological balance?
People can protect plankton by limiting the use of disposable single-use plastics that cause marine debris, using fossil-fueled energy efficiently to reduce CO2 emissions, urging companies to stop destroying habitats in the oceans by decreasing oil mining, encouraging others to stop overfishing since it can ruin the ecological balance.
An essential way of saving the ocean is introducing the blue economy to school education to support students to build a sustainable future in coastal areas and islands. Our patient is still in a critical situation. We need to take action now to stop the deterioration.
As the UN Climate Change Conference COP26 ends, the world is still far short of where it needs to be. We must accelerate our momentum with 1.5 degrees Celsius remaining barely within reach. Countries should cooperate together to achieve the Paris Rulebook Agreement, which aims to reduce the global rise of greenhouse gas emissions as soon as possible.
Here, it is essential to apply Goal 14 of SDG for maintaining life underwater by protecting and restoring damaged ecosystems and adopting sustainability to protect marine and coastal ecosystems.
Countries are urged to work on SDG Goal 12 by implementing a 10-year framework program on sustainable consumption patterns. Also, we need to encourage companies to adopt sustainable practices and integrate sustainability into their reporting cycles.
SDG's Goal 13 encourages integrating policies on climate change to further investigate AI technology to find solutions for global warming. Geoengineering, for example, is the deliberate, large-scale intervention to counteract climate change. Geoengineering is split into two broad categories, the first being carbon geoengineering, the other being solar geoengineering. Examples of this approach include spraying seawater thousands of meters into the air to seed the formation of clouds that block sunlight, installing sun shields or mirrors in space that can deflect sunlight, or injecting sun-blocking particles into space.
Another AI invention is an Icelandic project called Carpets. This project speeds up the natural process of turning carbon dioxide into stone. The carbon dioxide is dissolved by the water. The water with the dissolved carbon dioxide is then pumped deep into the ground.
When the sparkling water is pumped into the right kind of rocks, the rocks release metals that mix with the CO2 in the water, turning the CO2 into stone. This process both safely and permanently removes the CO2 from the atmosphere since rocks cannot leak out of the ground. This process might be able to help reduce our patient's symptoms.
The final invention we want to highlight is plastic-eating enzymes. These were engineered in 2018 and can degrade plastics that would usually persist for hundreds of years before breaking down naturally. This process may help with the plastic crisis seen on our seas and reduce the microplastics infiltrating the food chain.
Now, let us take one of the leading examples, our home country, the UAE. It might help us find the correct medicine for this patient. The UAE Net Zero by 2050 initiative is a national drive to achieve net zero emissions by 2050.
The initiative will help reduce the impact of global warming on the ocean. The UAE has also joined the UK Global Ocean Alliance, which aims for safeguarding at least 30% of the world's ocean by 2030. Moreover, in January 2012, Sheikh Mohammed launched the Green Economy Initiative. The initiative aims to promote the use of renewable energy and green infrastructure worldwide.
This will help reduce CO2 emissions and save the plankton. The country has invested over $40 billion in the sector and has promoted green infrastructure and clean energy projects in more than 70 countries. Our last hope of saving our patient, the earth, is the people. However, not many people have been taking care of our planet, which caused a drastic increase in global temperatures. So people now must use eco-friendly products and reduce energy use overall. We need to change this reality and save our dear patient before it's too late.
The first runner-up of the third day of this competition under this strong topic that was rolled out for you is Dubai National School EEG Boys. Well done, Dubai National School.
We will be starting now.
Let me start.
The year is 2050. In many places around the world, the air is hot and clogged with pollution. Your eyes often water and your cough never seems to disappear. You can no longer breathe fresh air. Our world will continue to heat up. We have already passed tipping points like the great melting of the Arctic sea ice. Oceans and forests had for many years absorbed half the carbon dioxide we spewed out.
By using a time travel machine that takes us back in time to fix our past mistakes, gives us one last chance to heal our cities and to delay the inevitable. To refine the past, we must first understand sustainability from all four aspects: social, environmental, economic, and institutional. Social infrastructure sustainability is the managing and identifying of businesses' impacts on employees with the effects on the local environment.
Environmental infrastructure sustainability is the responsibility to conserve natural resources and protect global ecosystems to support health and well-being. Economic sustainability refers to practices that support long-term economic growth without negatively impacting social, environmental, and cultural aspects of the community.
Institutional sustainability refers to the activities of a particular institution relating to the facilitation of decision-making and implementation of sustainability policies. And now, let's start our journey to the past. We landed in the year 1760, the Industrial Revolution.
The transition from creating goods by hand to using machines. The Industrial Revolution was a period of poor living conditions, low wages, child labor, and pollution, not to mention the 375 billion tons of carbon dioxide that were emitted by humans into the atmosphere.
During the industrial age, the world saw a 50% to 100% increase in population that majorly affected the economic and environmental dimensions of sustainability and led to the depletion of natural resources. Industrial factories are major contributors to air pollution. Approximately 71% of toxic materials and gases like carbon dioxide and methane are burned and pumped into the atmosphere.
We have now arrived in Germany, September 1st, 1939, World War II. The war had devastating effects on the environmental and social dimensions of sustainability. The bombardment of cities' infrastructure and the destruction of lands caused an increase in carbon emissions, which was during the period of 1939 to 1950 and accounts for over 2 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide.
On the other hand, widespread rationing and the 60 million deaths that made up 3% of the world population at the time might have offset net greenhouse gas emissions for a while. But more than 50% of people are internally displaced and seek refuge in neighboring countries, overburdening the capacities of the host city's infrastructure.
In the early phases of war, the main emissions will arise from damaged infrastructure and overpopulation, making up 23% of CO2 emissions. In 1873, the petroleum revolution changed the economic distribution, which led to a change of power. It was a period of great development in infrastructure, and though this development was very valuable, it was not sustainable.
Fast forwarding to 2021, 78% of those emissions were emitted from 7 main energy and land use systems: power, industry, mobility, agriculture, forestry, buildings, and waste. Power, consisting of electricity and heat generation, 30% of CO2 emissions. Industry, production of steel and refining of oil, gas, and coal, 30% of CO2 emissions. Mobility, consisting of road, rail, and other forms of transportation, 19% of CO2 emissions.
Agriculture, consisting of emissions from agricultural practices and fishing, 38% of methane emissions and 79% of nitrogen emissions. Forestry and other land use, 14% of CO2 emissions. Buildings with utilities, 6% of CO2 emissions. Waste, consisting of solid waste disposal and management, 23% of methane emissions.
We're approaching light speed. Hang tight, we arrive at one of the first international agreements that brought light on the concept of net zero greenhouse gas emissions. It was agreed and held at the United Nations Climate Change Conference COP21 2015 that had the shared goal of reducing carbon emissions by 45% by the year 2030 and reach the ultimate goal of net zero emissions by the year 2050.
In January 2021, the UAE cabinet approved the UAE Circular Economy Policy, which is used for determining the country's approach to achieving a sustainable governance, whilst also applying rules and regulations from the Dubai Building Code. By implementing them, this will help maintain the current living standards for future generations.
In 2021, as we know, carbon emissions affect the planet significantly, but a solution for each land and energy use system has been provided to solve the net zero equation. Power, by replacing fossil fuel plants for power generation.
Industry. Steel and cement production could be decarbonized by installing carbon capture and storage equipment. Mobility. Decarbonization will involve replacing ICE vehicles with battery electric vehicles. Forestry, by halting deforestation. Buildings, by using new energy sectors such as hydrogen and biofuels.
Rare earth metals such as yttrium, lanthanum, and cerium are critical for a transition to a low carbon infrastructure. They encourage environmental and institutional sustainability across the globe.
ESG reporting for companies worldwide, focusing on Scope 3, which reflects emissions from upstream and downstream on the value chain, rather than only focusing on Scope 1 and Scope 2, which do with direct and indirect emissions, would decrease carbon dioxide emissions by 27%.
Moving forward to 2030, nature-based solutions are helping heal the environmental dimension of sustainability. They help us adapt to the impacts of climate change by rebalancing cities' relationships with the surrounding areas. In cities, nature-based solutions and green infrastructure include urban parks, as they can absorb 29% of carbon and replace it with oxygen. Created wetlands can also be a solution, as they use natural processes involving wetland vegetation.
As we approach 2035, some cities face problems with nature-based solutions as they are improper in an urban environment. They found that artificial solutions could be the way to go. Artificial solutions such as carbon sinks are artificial deposits of carbon. They are completely eco-friendly and positively impact the environmental sector of sustainability. They can be placed in cities to suck in almost 50% of the carbon emitted, which is another big step towards net zero.
It is 2050. The world has improved its understanding of how important it is to reach net zero. Many countries have developed solutions that encourage these solutions, and in many places around the world, the air is fresh, cities no longer pre-submerged smoke, and we have prevented our Earth from the inevitable fate, which is a 3-degree increase in temperature, and you have the trees to thank for that, as they are everywhere.
Reimagining and restructuring cities was a crucial part to solving the climate challenge puzzle, but further steps had to be taken, which meant that global rewilding efforts had to reach well beyond cities. Forest cover worldwide is now 50%, and now we can rightfully say that our planet is sustainable, and the citizens of the world can finally be thankful for the fortunate events that took place throughout the past few decades. Do you want to reach net zero and save our Mother Earth? It's up to you to choose the right path.